Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Literary Hour. I am your co host, Jackie Sayegh, and with me, as always, is my co host and my prof. Hi, prof. How are you?
Hi, Jackie.
Yeah,
Nice
how's
being around
everything?
again. Yeah,
Happy Good Friday.
yeah, that's right. Right. Mm,
Yes.
another good
So,
Friday.
and although we didn't know, we chose, I guess, an appropriate topic for today,
Mm,
right? A religious topic to follow
mm,
up on the
mm,
one we had last week
mhm.
about Galileo.
Yes.
So I think that this week we're even going deeper until you. When I read it, I was so scared. I was, hey God. Oh, okay. So sorry. Today we're going to discuss one of the, I guess, if one of the most important
Mm.
sermons in, is it Christianity or in the West or
Well, American Christian history or something like that, so one would say. Okay.
yeah. So share the show,
Mm,
call your friends. We will talk a
mhm.
little bit before we get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Prof, uh when I did the reading, I guess when you suggested this particular topic,
Mm,
I was thinking why, why would we have this topic? But
mm,
when I read it, like I said, I think it's fitting that we have this topic.
yeah.
I think that people who, although you guys always say to me that I tell people buy the book. This one, you don't even have to buy the book,
That's a
right?
good
You don't have
see
to
it.
buy the book. You could just read it
Google it.
online because
Yeah.
I did post the topic, so
Okay.
I think that people are able to follow. Okay, so we'll get into it now. We'll wait for one more minute while people share the show.
Mm,
Yes,
mhm.
and then we will get into it. So Prof, you yourself should share the show too.
Yes. So what do I do? I press share. It's an old school.
Yeah.
So
Um,
the one with the plus sign you share the screen.
I
Okay.
think so. I think some of our friends will show you how to share it, but I think that, yeah, I think you press something there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we share the show. So okay, so let's get into it. Um, so today we're going to talk about the Great Awakening and the sermons that came out of the Great Awakening.
Mhm.
And so historically, the Church of England, sorry, I'm getting phone calls left and right. The Church of England um always had it in such a way that people would have to work to get redemption, right, Prof?
Yes.
People follow the Church of England and their dictates, and because of that, they earn salvation that way. The church tithe them a lot. The poor people pay. So reading some of the background about that, can you tell us a little bit about how Christianity was in those days?
Every generation or after every other generation, uh, human beings reach a cyclical point
Yeah.
in their relationship with God, uh, so that almost immediately, like a magnet, it draws in religious groups who want to use every other means to a kind of re-stir human beings' fear of things that have the capacity to destroy the world or have the capacity to destroy one another. So that is part of what in the 1700s brought in the need for the Great Awakening. In other words, the re-stirring of the spirit, the re-stirring of the Holy Spirit to infuse human beings with all things sacred. And it was at that point that uh, Jonathan Edwards and the likes of Jonathan Edwards came in. In fact, it is said that uh, his father, hmm, his father had been a Presbyterian minister, and Jonathan, at the age of 12,
Yeah.
was infused by that, and it is said that his first major attention to that was when he wrote one of his sisters at the age when he was at the age of 12, talking about there was an awakening. There was an awakening. In other words, their father and those linked uh, were interested in reawakening society to the things of God. So that becomes the basis. Well, when he grows up, he kind of follows his father's path in terms of pursuing that theme in Christian theology that had to do with restirring the Holy Spirit, restirring human beings' interest in the things of God.
Yeah, and before the Great Awakening in the United States,
Mhm.
reading the what came before.
Yeah,
So John Wesley and George
mhm,
Whitefield
yeah,
in England, right? They started to preach about the fact that you must have a personal relationship with
yeah.
God. That salvation and redemption was not through listening to all these very strict
Yeah.
adherence to the church,
Mhm. Yeah.
all these uh um old prescribed way of doing
Yeah. Yeah.
things, that it would be best if you work on your relationship with
Yes.
God.
Yes.
Yeah. So in fact, George Wesley, I mean John Wesley and George
Mhm.
Whitefield, they were banned from preaching in England. So they went down to Lancaster,
Mhm.
that they said they had like the working poor, the
Yeah.
very poor people. And they started preaching to them, and people
Mhm.
started to respond to this. That you mean I don't have to bow down, get up,
Yeah.
kneel down, get
Yeah.
up,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that I can be in my room and I can pray
You
to
pray,
God.
yeah. Mhm.
So it was, I mean, time was appropriately named the Great Awakening,
Yeah.
because people started to question these things, to say, this ritual, these repeated rituals, I
Yes.
don't have to do it.
Yeah.
I can, and that's what we talked about yesterday, I mean
Yeah.
last week, about Galileo being a
Yeah.
man of faith,
Yes.
not necessarily following the dictates of the church,
Mm-hmm.
but a man
Mm-hmm.
of faith. So,
Mm-hmm.
of course, then Wesley, I think Wesley or Whitfield, they came to the United States,
Yeah.
right? In the mix of that, of course, we have John Edwards that we're going to talk about
Mm-hmm.
today. But but Prof, you told me to read this other sermon,
Mm-hmm.
but you remember we always say follow the footnote.
Yeah. Follow the footnotes. Yes.
Yeah. So
Which
one
is
of
very
the
much
one of
important.
the precursor, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, to this sermon that we're going to discuss is the one by John Wesley.
Yeah.
And I sent it to you because I was like, oh, Prof, look at this one. Look at this one. It's
Yeah.
it's it's oh wait, let me see. How do I it's this one. It's oof.
Almost thou
John
pursued.
Wesley. It's called the Almost Christian.
Yes.
Yeah. And then for these people, because actually these people were the beginning of the evangelical movement.
Yeah.
All the Holy Ghost people you see
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
came from
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yeah.
But they used to have a quote, and then from that quote they get their doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
So John Wesley's when he spoke at Oxford, his the quote was Acts 26, 26,
Mm-hmm.
28. Almost that persuaded me to be a Christian. And so this was what he said. He said, but supposing you had do good designs and good desires make a Christian. He said, by no means unless they are brought to good effect. Hell is paved. So he's saying that look, you keep thinking that everything you do, everything will make you a Christian. He says, but no, let no man deceive his own soul, right? He said it is diligently to be noted, and he talks about, if do you love your neighbor?
Yeah.
Do you believe God? And but then he says, these things that you believe, Prof. He said these things that you believe, you say you're a Christian, even the devil believe them.
Mm-hmm.
He said, and so they believe all that is written in the Old and New Testament, and yet for all this faith, they be but devils. They remain still in their damnable estate, lacking the very true Christian faith.
Yeah.
And let me just say, this is copyrighted 1999 by the Wesley Center for Applied Theology. Text may be freely used for personal or scholarly purposes, and I've said that. So let's talk about the precursor, right? So this almost Christian sermon that John Wesley preached,
Yeah.
to say that, look, you guys thinking that by you going to church, you're doing what God's what the church is dictating, you really think you're a Christian. He said, but you're a Christian on the outside, you're not Christian on the inside. You have no personal relationship with God. And so that's when people started to question, you know what can I do to be saved? So of course the emperor friend comes in the middle of it. John Edwards. John Edwards comes. Yeah. And no, but uh this sermon, they say, is the most important sermon in the Christian faith. I guess that's what it's called, right? And when you chose it, of course I had heard about it. I think I've glanced at it, but when you told me, okay, we're going to do this one, I said, well, let me go and read it. So I read it, but for those who haven't, I'll just add this. It says, "Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God" is a sermon that was preached by Jonathan Edwards, most famously on July 8th, 1741. In Enfield, Connecticut. That day, God used sinners in the hands of an angry God to produce powerful convictions and repentance among those who heard it, with many people coming to the faith, right? It is the most famous sermon of the Great Awakening. So he used the quote, "Their foot shall slide in due time." Deuteronomy 32:35. Yeah, so that is what he used for that. So now we come to that. We come to it. But Prof, they said when he was preaching, people were crying.
We're crying. Of course, all that eventually, I think, you know, one thing done to excess, especially if people kind of recognize the design of what you're trying to do, then they kind of pull back and it hardens them again. You see, because in fact, this we are in the literary hour thing, and I this is one beautiful piece of literature for the showing of the power of language.
Yes,
You
yes,
see, the power of language, the metaphors, the entire realm of figures of speech
yeah,
brought into play. The concrete language versus the abstract language.
yeah,
That is that power, especially when we just left Galileo's letter to Duchess Christina.
yeah,
So that is what. As to the breakup, of course, we know that in sermons, people first introduce a text, and then they go on to the next level, which is a justification of the text. And then the third is they kind of link the text to uh, what is happening in the world and see how those merge and see what path the hearer is expected to take in the process. Those are the phases that Jonathan Edwards went through to get to the point of what we are talking about today. If you are thinking about this, also think about Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. Passion of the Christ, and and which it kind of I understand uh, con, con, convinced several people who had seen the movie to a kind of change their ugly ways and follow Christ.
And if we talk about that, let's talk about the personification of God,
Yeah,
right? He talks about God like a person,
yeah,
God
yeah.
will crush you under his feet.
Ah,
He talks about hell
yes,
with I mean hell now with not personification, but
mm,
hell he talks about it with brimstone, that
yeah,
is
yeah.
fire. People will
Mhm,
be burning,
yes,
and he builds it up.
yes,
His language builds up over time.
yeah.
Yeah, the imagery of the devil,
Yes, the imagery
yeah,
of the devil.
the
Yes,
devil as a lion to
yes, that's
devour you. Yeah,
uh-huh. Talking about that, in painting they have the Baroque movement,
yeah,
in which, especially after Martin Luther, uh, he nailed his 95 thesis and what have you. People kind of became kind of radicalized by his stance that you don't have to pay for salvation and all that kind of thing. Within, of course, this Baroque began around 1300s, going to 1400s, or what have you. It became even more powerful when Martin Luther gave his thesis. So the thing about it is, people, as I said earlier, that every generation or another generation after that will produce a cyclical concern for human beings and how they relate to God and what have you. And if human beings began to backslide, the church will do all sort of things. And one of those happened to be the painting of the most horrifying images of hell and what have you. Dante in his Inferno, he was one of those who kind of impacted the idea of just painting hell in such a raw and frightening way, so that those who have the inkling to want to break away from things of the Lord will be forced to rethink. And those things, like I said, they work together. This cyclical thing of how human beings relate to God and how God relates to man, and what people need to do to ensure the partnership is stronger as opposed to being weaker.
and I'm sure like they said, they have four different uh, awakenings, right? Great
Mhm, yeah, yeah.
awakenings, right? In fact, they say
Mhm.
we are in the fourth one now.
Ah,
But I mean, there are times you go to church,
mhm.
and when the pastor is preaching, you
Mhm.
get, he's talking about the wrath of God. You get so scared. You're like,
Yeah,
oh,
mhm.
maybe I should walk chalk line. Maybe I should be good because
Yeah, yeah,
what this guy is talking. But I guess for the people of that time, being used to going to church and hearing the pastor saying the same thing, in
yeah.
Latin, in Greek,
Great, yeah. Oh,
sit down, get up, sit down, get up,
yeah.
and to see, because they said that, I think it was, if not Edward, it was Wesley. I think when he was denied the pulpit,
Yes.
he built his own pulpit and he would take it around with him
Yeah.
to preach. And so people would flock to him. So I think that with Edwards coming to talk about sinners in the hands of an angry God,
Yeah.
like people may have thought, okay, we have a loving God.
Yes.
We have a God
For
that
forgive.
forgives us.
Yeah.
We have a God who cares for us.
Yes.
And Jonathan Edwards disabused them of that.
Yeah.
He said, no, you don't. You
That's
have an angry God,
yeah.
a God that is angry, and you
Mhm.
have to repent.
Yes.
And they said people were crying.
Uh-huh.
People were crying in the
Yes.
church, because he put the what do you say, he put the fear of God in them.
Lord, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
he
right.
put the fear of God in them.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I have the sermon here, so we
Mhm.
can we see. Okay, so
He,
um Hmm.
you will realize that his own life eventually became that of a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
Yeah, there has to be a moment at which you release the vapor a bit by opening the cover of the cooker.
Yeah.
But if you continue, like I said, if you continue so much and what have you, people again, what you didn't intend will happen where people will say, "Oh, let people hear ya, let people hear," that sort of a thing. Eventually, his life, especially towards the end of his life, he faced that, and nobody was taking interest in him again, and nobody had any time for the fear in his early days he had put in human beings that kept made them cry and all that kind of a thing. Anyway,
Yeah, he says, I'm quoting him, he said, "Oh sinner, consider the fearful danger you are in.
uh-huh,
It is a great furnace of wrath,
mm-hmm,
a wide and bottomless pit,
uh-huh,
full of the fire of wrath,
yeah, yes,
that you are held over in the hand of God,
yes,
whose wrath is provoked and incensed as much
yes,
against you.
hmm,
You hang by a slender thread,
yeah, that's right,
with the flames of
yeah,
divine wrath
uh-huh,
flashing about it,
yeah, yes, yes,
and ready every moment to
yeah,
singe it and burn it."
hmm.
You know, and those who are on the show with us, they can, I mean, if they have another computer, they can read sinners in
Mhm.
the hands of an angry God.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
because we want you to join the conversation, because
mhm,
this guy is like, he was making them scared.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
he says God will have no regard to your,
mhm.
God stands ready to pity you.
Ah,
You say you may
you see,
cry.
yeah.
No, and but I mean, this
And,
guy, he was
and he
like,
says that nobody, no, you human beings, you have, but nobody has the power to stop him.
yeah,
Whatever he
he
may
wants
not
to
be
do.
doing is because he has some level of pulling back. But much of it is that he wants to destroy you if you don't want to look his way, if you don't want to repent and what have you.
And this is an all-powerful God.
Yeah,
He
all
can do
powerful.
whatever he wants, and he's ready to squash you.
Yeah, that's right.
So
You
he, I think, let me see if this. He said, "Yeah, there is nothing that keeps wicked men at any one moment out of hell,
yes.
but the mere pleasure of God.
Yeah.
By the mere pleasure of God, I mean his sovereign pleasure, his
Mhm.
arbitrary will,
Uh-huh.
restrained by
By
no
no
obligation,
obligation, yes.
hindered by
By
no
no
manner of
manner of
difficulty,
difficulty, yes.
any more than if nothing else but God's mere will had in the least degree, or in
Uh-huh.
any respect whatsoever, any
Uh-huh.
hand in the preservation of wicked men one moment."
Yeah.
You know, but I was like, oh, but this man,
Yes.
you
You
know,
know.
I was like, oh,
Mhm.
so he's ready. He's telling you that, God is angry with you. So Prof, I'm like, but what happened to the merciful God?
I know. And again, we will see that uh, it is the raft of the Old Testament versus
Yes,
the mercy of the New Testament. It is transitioning from that into why don't you accept Christ?
yeah,
Yes, God had been that because of the hard-headedness, the hard-heartedness of human beings, and yet over time, His Son Jesus Christ came, and and then He transitions into that aspect of it. Then why don't you come to Christ to do X, Y, Z?
yeah. The fire and brimstone. He
Yeah.
says, it will be dreadful to suffer this fierceness and wrath of Almighty God, but you
Mhm.
must suffer it to all eternity.
Hmm.
There will be no end to this exquisite, horrible misery.
Wow.
When you look forward, you shall see a long forever,
Hmm.
a boundless duration before you, which will swallow up your thoughts and amaze your soul.
Hmm.
I'm like, but wait now.
It's
So so so
he step on the pedal.
but like you said, Prof, I mean, this is a literary hour. I
Yeah.
mean, just the imagery,
Yeah. The imagery is
just the
so rich.
imagery, because
Mhm.
even reading this, when he says that you're over this pit and God is
Yeah.
holding you, you can see.
Yes, see it. Yes. You see.
And he says every moment
Yes.
changes. So it
Hmm.
means that the fire is so hot
Hmm.
that even when you're like that, it's burning you.
Yes.
And
Eh,
there's nothing that stops God from
yeah.
dropping you, he says.
It is only God who can stop God, and that's not
Yeah.
going to happen. It's like even talking about the Damocles sword over
Yes.
human God, Damocles
Yes.
sword over human beings, and what have you, that sort of a thing. But the richness, again, talking about the literariness of the word, the
Yeah.
richness of the concrete images are so powerful. And if one wanted to teach the power of language through metaphors, similes, personification, all that kind of thing, that text happens to be one of those to kind of look at.
Yeah, and with this great awakening,
Yeah,
it's very interesting because when I was reading about it, something that was very important that was that they said that before this great awakening,
yeah,
right? The colonies in the United States, they were all
yeah,
separate.
yeah,
There was the colony of New York,
yeah,
the colony of Massachusetts,
yeah. That's right.
colony of Philadelphia,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and each one of these, like Massachusetts, they were Puritans.
Yes.
The colony of Maryland
Hmm.
was Catholic.
Good.
The southern colonies were Anglican.
Yeah, good.
But in this great awakening
Hmm.
that said, look, know God for yourself, you know, they said that, some of the writers said that this also brought about nationalism and
Yeah,
national unity
yeah.
because people were saying we are one.
Yes.
We are not going to be listening to no Church of England or
Yeah.
this. We are one
Come on.
people.
Yes.
So this religious fervor, this new way of doing
Yeah.
things also, because then with the second awakening came freedom, or the third awakening, which means liberation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gradually, the
Hmm.
term liberation came, the civil rights movement. So
Yes.
they said that the awakenings come every 100 years.
Ah.
The great awakening is like
Mhm.
every 100 years.
Yeah. Okay.
So I hope we're in a good awakening period now. Yeah.
It's the thing about change. The thing about change is very much important. Carl Rogers, uh, an important psychologist, uh, he described change as one of the most threatening moments in human life. There comes a time that people are so head bent on following their own ways and what have you, even if those ways are corrupt, even if those ways are petty and all that kind of a thing. So it's got to take a stronger force to be able to have human beings see the necessity of change.
Yeah.
And once the necessity of change shows up, then of course it will take some time to groom that change to make it more impactful and all that. So again, we can see that change in secular terms, but it also has its own religious uh, tinges to kind of recognize and pay attention to. That is,
So as the people were free, right? Free to explore their
yeah,
own spirituality,
yes,
free to question,
hmm,
actually, to
yeah,
say why do I have to go inside a structure? I
yes,
can worship God in nature. The
yes,
pastor comes to me. I
yes,
don't have to go,
yes,
and my pastor doesn't speak Greek or Latin. He speaks the
yes.
word of God. Yeah.
It's a plane for us.
Yeah. So I think that I guess the hallmark, or the most critical identifier
Mm,
is sinners in the hand of the angry God. But
yeah,
there were so many other sermons coming out of that,
yeah,
But I guess what I would say is, remember when we were talking about the stages of growth of a country,
yeah,
and they said that there, from the traditional society, there's also, um, when a society or a nation is poised to take off, something momentous happens
yeah.
to change that society. So the society can never go back
Mhm.
is irrevocably changed,
Yes.
right? So I would say the Great Awakening, although it's not infrastructure, it's
Mm,
not invention,
yeah.
it's the changing of the mind.
That's and it's important that you identify the changing of the mind, because that's where a lot of things occur. That's where the signals for the magnetic forces around
Yeah.
can be absorbed and what have you. So the changing of the mind is very much important. That's why, in fact, even just to sneak in a little of our own experiences, I'm talking about laborious experiences or what have you. People will talk about the social change movement in the 70s and say nothing has changed, because people saw that within the context of the reduction of prices and all that kind of thing, and very, very impressive cost of living and what have you. But it was the changing of the minds. It was the changing of the minds that set the pace, whether for good or for evil. The changing of the mind set the pace for a number of things. And so those who orchestrate change, those who bring about change or strive to bring about change, they are often interested, at least many of them are interested in the change of heart and mind towards a lot of well, positive things, if that may be, or even if it is negative things. The idea that people can sit back and reflect on those things become very much important. That is why such a change, people have got to uh, collectively look at that change. Otherwise, so many divergent things will come about, and the society may never be the same again. Sometimes in a very sad way.
Yeah. So like we say, I think the most durable change is the mindset, when the
Yeah.
mindset changes. Yeah. So these, I mean, because of course there were detractors,
Of
you
course,
know.
in
Yeah.
there will always
like
be
like with
detractors.
Galileo, there were people
Yeah,
who were
yeah,
saying that no, you need to
yeah.
go to the church, you need to
Yes,
do
yes.
this,
Uh-huh.
because of course the church saw it as loss of tithes and offerings.
Yes,
I don't
yes.
think they saw it as saving souls. They saw it as they were losing money.
Bread and butter issue
Bread and butter issues.
in
Yeah.
Africa. As we talk about the loss of Gary.
Yeah. Yeah.
You put sand in my Gary, I go deal with you well, well.
Yeah. So when the mindset is changed,
Yeah.
right? Of course, then not only did they question the church, it gave them the agency to question authority.
Yes.
You see, the state. If we
Remember?
can question God,
Yeah.
or God's representative,
Yes.
we can question.
Mhm.
Because if you look at the following great awakenings that
Yeah.
came, they started to question the society.
Yes.
Why aren't we equal?
Mhm.
Why don't women vote?
So this came after the period of enlightenment. Now, the
Yes,
period of enlightenment, what have you,
yes,
breaking away from a God-centered control to intellect-centered control.
yes,
That is
yes.
what that became the centerpiece of the enlightenment, and then it began to cast all the shadows and all the kind of a thing.
Yeah. I think that that's the most durable awakening, when
Mhm.
you awaken the mind,
Yes,
of people.
and
Um,
yet it's dangerous. As I said, yet it is dangerous if you don't have people to guide that awakening.
yes.
If you don't have a cadre of people to guide that awakening, it becomes a terrible thing. And that is, again, talking about Liberia. That is what is happening. All of a sudden, hell broke loose. The coup came, and no one so strong or no cadre of people to guide the awakening in that place. There, therefore, everything went amok.
But Prof, I mean, every time we have a show, we find connections.
Yes,
Because if you look at the allegory of the cave, and we will
yes,
keep coming back to the
we
allegory of
have
the
to.
cave because that is important.
Yes,
They say that when those that are shackled, when they are released,
yes,
they don't just look into the sun.
no,
That hallway is to get them adjusted
yes,
to the light.
yes.
And then once
Yes.
they are adjusted to the light, they are
Yes.
able to come out of the cave.
Yeah. They
You
become
see,
acolytes of
yes.
the light.
So there
Yes.
are stages to
Yes.
this
Mm-hmm.
enlightenment. You
Mm-hmm.
don't
Mm-hmm.
you don't jump from I'm going to church
Yeah.
now I'm safe. No, no, no,
Yes.
no, no, no,
No,
no.
no.
There are
There had to
steps.
be a way
Yeah,
of crawling towards that point. That's true.
yeah. And so the humans that will guide other humans
Yeah.
in the allegory of the cave, they are the hallway.
Yeah.
They serve as the hallway
Yes.
where people now become adjusted to the light
Yes.
before going
Yeah.
outside.
Before going.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it is critical that those that guide you on that hallway must themselves be sane,
Mm-hmm.
balanced, rational
Yes.
people,
Yes. Balance,
because
rational, sane.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
very much important. It's very much important.
Because I mean we'll come back to Jonathan Edwards, but let's just look at the state of religion. I wouldn't even
Mm-hmm.
call it Christianity, religion in
Yes.
Africa right now. Look at okay, so so of course we are not back to the church. So this is an evangelical now.
Mm-hmm.
The Great Awakening is an evangelical movement. But look at the amount of charlatans
Mm-hmm.
that are even on the web. Give me money.
Yeah.
I have to bathe you before you
Mm-hmm.
come into
Yeah.
God. I
Mm-hmm.
have to do this. So all
Mm-hmm.
of those
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
so now it seems as if something has happened. The evangelism has become more, it has increased, but the parishioners, right? The parishioners who are supposed to now question,
Mm-hmm.
they're not questioning.
No, they are gullible. It's
Yeah,
something.
but it's like,
Yes.
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I say it's like they're going back to the
Yeah.
dark ages.
Mm-hmm.
How, Prof? Why?
Again, the guidance had not been there. The guidance had not been there, and therefore a prototype of redemption is not there. Even if it is there, it is not well orchestrated to mean something that brings people closer to God, except it brings people closer to man of flesh and what have you. And that has become a problem. That has become a problem where is the man of God said it, so it got to be true and that sort of a thing without a question in mind. So in the shadows has got to be an amount of enlightenment.
Yeah.
And because at the heart of an enlightenment is questioning why something is what the way it is. Why is this so? Can it be this way and what have you? And if it cannot be X way, why can it be X way and that sort of? But if the aspect of enlightenment is not there, then definitely people can backslide in the primeval time where the word of the man of God became law and gospel and what have you. So the thing about those two have to go hand in hand. The awakening, religious awakening, has to go hand in hand with enlightenment. If that is not so, then the people are in trouble. That's where we some time ago we talked about the heaven's gates and the June's temple and what have you. So people can backslide into things orchestrated by people who have mind of evil for themselves, people who have mind of evil for selfish reasons and what have you.
And also the fact that Wesley and Whitfield and Edwards, right? All of them spearheaded this awakening
Yeah.
movement. But and I know you agree with me on this. There were people who foreshadowed this. People like Galileo,
Yeah.
people who question, and I
Yeah.
think that's why we come back to that. When we started this show, we said we are on a journey, and we invited people to come with us on this journey,
Yeah.
and we said that don't take our word. We are
Don't
only
take no.
discussing
Yes.
things.
Yeah. Don't take our
Question,
word. Yes.
question. So
Mm-hmm.
with Galileo questioning things,
Yeah.
with Copernicus
Copernicus. Yeah. Yeah.
questioning things,
Mm-hmm.
all of these questioning, it fed into some people, so they carried a torch.
Yeah.
They
They
started
carry the
questioning
torch.
too.
Yeah. They
Yeah,
carry
they
the
started
torch.
questioning too.
Yeah.
And of course, it built up. So when somebody is sitting in the church and this the Church of England and the
Mm-hmm.
bishop is saying, Dominus, Dominus, give me money. He is saying, why should I?
Yeah. Why should
You
I?
know, why should I, when this other man said that I can pray to God
Yeah.
myself,
Mm-hmm.
I can have a personal
Yeah.
relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So every word that Whitfield or Wesley,
Mm-hmm.
it fell on fertile soil,
Yeah.
and other people carry it. So then you
Yeah.
had the second awakening and the
Yeah.
third awakening, and as I
Mm-hmm.
say, we're in the fourth awakening now.
Yes.
Yeah,
Metastasize. Yeah.
yeah.
I think.
So I think that, oh, but when I was reading it, I was like, we're going to continue. We're going to continue. Let's get some comments if we have
Mm,
comments, and then we can continue
yeah.
the last time we couldn't see comments, but
Mm.
maybe. Oh, Priscilla is here. Good day,
That's right.
family.
All
I
right.
think, hi,
Priscilla,
Priscilla. Yes,
how
we're
are you?
discussing sinners in the hands of an angry God.
Mm.
Yes, and Hashimi family said, "Good evening, family. Good
Good
evening."
evening.
Yeah, I like that
Mm.
family. Yeah. Priscilla said, "Oh, please do not expose Prof technical handicap."
Oh,
That was when you were trying to share the show, Prof.
oh, share the show. I know.
Oh, Tobasi is here. He says, "Good day to our educators in the studio. Good
Yeah.
day to
Hi,
you."
it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Emmanuel says, "Sinners in the hands of a compassionate God." Jonathan Edwards' sermon wasn't in the correct direction. Emmanuel, I agree with you, but I think in some places he did have compassion. We'll try and see that. Edison said the sermon was apt after the dark ages that plunged Europe and the West into darkness. The
Yeah.
Enlightenment necessitated the
Yeah.
need to reawaken the new era of God and
Yeah.
godliness. Preachers didn't want to go back to the time of the past. Preachers
Mm.
in those times believed that when the tree decays, it begins to spread death to the
Yeah.
branches.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
true.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
Yeah. Reverse says, say Constantine messed with Christian politics.
Okay. I mean, this this guy came into the conference with the church elders in military regalia. Constantine came into the place with military regalia.
Yeah.
He didn't want to hear anything about divisiveness in the church. He said, once I say that the whole thing is one, it's got to be one. And it was like, you dare not open your mouth to say anything against Constantine. Yes.
Pajibo says the importance of change in the mindset propels a change for all things. It is
Mhm.
said, if you want to change the way people do things, change the way they think.
Yeah.
My only regret is that the change we anticipate is not much reflected in our learning systems. Yeah, I agree
Mm.
with you. But it's not reflected, because I think that a lot of our teachings now is too um is this authoritarianism.
Mm.
Just say what I say, just write what
Mhm.
I write, and not to question. I mean, prof, you were my teacher, so
Mhm.
I mean, we're at the university, but sometimes you put your hands up and you want to ask questions and you're
Mhm.
scared
Mhm. Yeah.
because the teacher will make you shame,
Mhm. Mhm.
or so
Mhm.
you are afraid. And
Yeah.
last week we said that the man who was in the church, he said, "Wait, now you can't ask questions in this
Actually,
place."
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I agree with Edison that we need to get our students not to challenge. There's
Mm.
a difference,
Between
between challenging somebody
and
and
seeking to
asking
understand.
questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
You said this, but is it really this way, or
Yeah.
why is it this way?
Okay.
And it's the teacher would have patience, like you
Mm.
said, the teacher should be guided and
Yeah.
rational and
Yeah.
stable to
Yeah.
say,
Mm.
okay, let me explain to you
This
why
way.
it is this
Yeah.
way. Yeah. I think Edison is right in that one.
Yeah.
Priscilla said, but was it actually a God-centered approach though, where it sounds like there was an equality and people were not enlightened? I thought God would want us to have light information to flourish. But
Mm.
that's why we're saying that at that time it
That was it.
wasn't. Yeah, they were using God, and
Yeah.
that's what Wesley said in his thing, almost a Christian,
Mhm.
that you were only going through the dictates. On Sunday, you were in church.
Mhm.
Whatever the Bible, whatever the church said, you were like, look at me, I'm a Christian. But he was saying you are not a Christian.
But
You're
yeah,
almost a Christian, but
yeah.
you're not.
Keep in mind too that hey, slavery had an impact. The revulsion of slavery had an impact on some of these things as well. How would you be talking about a God who loves and what have you, and yet you have people who were preaching that word. Some of them were also engaged in slavery and what have you. So many things the whole conundrum of things happening at that time, it kind of it threw a lot of things almost like an explosion. And so there had to be a way of kind of understanding these things to kind of steer things to a proper way, steer things in a proper path as one would want to see happen. As the lady is saying, Priscilla is saying about uh, what are we talking about? Could we have a way of bringing in that enlightenment that will make people understand the need for change and all that?
But also if you look at it, the first enlightenment was the lighting of the flame.
Uh-huh.
But then there was the second. I mean, the first awakening, the second awakening.
Yeah.
It shows, and the third, the second, people started to question,
Yeah.
why is it that women can't vote?
Yes.
Why is it that there are some people who
People
are
are
very
still in
poor,
bondage. Yeah.
in society? So people started to question. So like Pajibo was saying, once your mindset,
Mm-hmm.
you start to question things,
Yeah.
and questioning things, you get answers, and the right answers now, not just getting an answer,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that what he's saying, Henry said the German monk Johann Tetzel apparently used strong words and fear to move people into giving money to the Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah.
When a coin in the coffee rings, a soul from purgatory springs. That is funny.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that, but that is funny. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Emmanuel Jackson said Charles Spurgeon's sermon. Yes, the great British theologian could be considered the enlightenment of the 19th and 20th century. Yeah, yeah, that's true. We just, yes, and then of course, Henry said then came Luther. Of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Maybe we should do Luther next. But anyway, yeah. Happy Easter, Eugenia. Yeah. So we shouldn't be talking about sinners in the hands of an angry God when we're talking about Easter. Emmanuel said Amos Komensky said it best: education must be given to all of humanity, turning the darkness into light. Yeah.
That's true.
But they also said that education, right, is not the filling of a bucket; it's the lighting of a fire.
Yeah.
Because once you light the fire, you know how much you don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
go to the library, prof. I'm like, look at all these books.
Gross. Yeah.
People
Mm-hmm.
have written. I haven't
Yeah.
read. I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
never.
Mm-hmm.
It's it is a lighting of the fire,
Yeah.
and then you question. But I agree. You need the right teachers. You need the right teachers
The
to
right
guide you,
atmosphere.
and
Yes.
the right teacher will not say, "Believe it because I say so."
Yes. Yes.
They
Yes.
would
Yes.
say to you, okay, this is what I believe, and this is
Yeah.
why I believe it. What do you think?
Yes.
You see, and
Help them to go and explore and
yes,
come back and let's talk.
yes. And that was very difficult for me when I came here for the university, because the teachers will, you go to the professor, they will have a little circle, you could probably
Yeah.
sit on the ground, you're just
Yeah.
chatting about the book
Mm-hmm.
you've read, and they
Yeah.
say, Jackie, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what?
Yeah. What I
And then they
think.
move from on, yeah, and it was so uplifting to just discuss,
So revealing
and
us.
one question leads to the other, leads to the other, leads to the
Yeah.
other, and that's how it is. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to our sermon. Let's go put some fear of God in some people. And there's one that he says, where is it? He says here, the one he talked about, that you are in a, what did he say? He says,
Is there a slippery ground?
no, he says the word will spew you out,
Hmm.
were it not for the sovereign hand of him who has subjected it in hope.
Hmm.
There are black clouds of God's wrath now hanging directly over your head, full of dreadful storm and big with thunder.
Can you imagine that?
And were it not for the restraining hand of God, it would immediately burst forth upon you. It is the sovereign pleasure of God
Ah! Ah!
which stays his hand. Otherwise, it will come with fury, and your destruction will come like a whirlwind, and you will be like the chaff of the summer threshing floor.
Wow.
The wrath of God is like great waters that are dammed for the present, they increase more and more and rise higher and higher until an outlet is given.
Wow.
Oh,
I say, oh, Jonathan Edwards.
he said, if God should only withdraw his hand from
Hmm.
the floodgates, it will immediately fly open, and the fiery floods of the wrath of God will rush forward
Hmm.
with inconceivable fury.
Wow.
Che-
Inconceivable fury. Mhm.
Oh, listen to this. He's trying to say that, look, you are nothing. You are nothing. He says, even if your strength were the strength of 10,000 times
Mhm.
greater, 10,000 times greater, right?
Mhm.
It will be nothing to withstand the wrath of God.
Hmm. Wow.
Probably hear that.
Yeah, that's right. And all powerful and even all brutal God to
Yeah.
make sure that, yes, it's like I was saying. So he says much of that in describing what one would call the Old Testament perspective of God.
Fire and brimstone.
Yeah, fire and brimstone, an
Yeah.
eye for an eye type of thing.
Yeah.
The no nonsense God,
No nonsense.
the unforgivable God, and what have you.
Unforgivable.
Yeah,
He said,
that's
he
right.
said the bow of God's wrath is bent,
Yes.
and the arrow made ready on the string.
Can you just
And
imagine that? Huh.
justice bends with the arrow at your heart.
What? At your heart, not even
Yes.
at any other thing, but at your heart.
And it strains the bow, and it is nothing
Yeah.
but the mere pleasure of God and that of an angry God, without any promise or obligation that keeps the arrow one moment from being made drunk with your blood.
Drunk with your blood. I mean, this is like I was saying, from the first level, you would say no. Do I want? So if you hear Spinoza, uh, the philosopher, if you hear Spinoza coming in to say that I am not interested in the God who will kind of keep an eye on the feelings of humans, as opposed to the God who harmonizes, the forces to elevate or to sustain human beings, then I'm not interested in that God. But again, as I was saying, it is the language, that compelling language uh, directed to fear that kind of put others off. And then you come to the reconciliation, the reconciliatory factor that came with the emergence of Christ, that changed things. And then, of course, Edwards went on to say that Christ is waiting at the door. He is throwing out an invitation for you to come, so that you will not be in the era of damnation, but in an era that is going to kind of cleanse you and bring you into a an environment of comfort, an environment of pleasantries and what have you.
So my question then is, what accounts now for this mass challengry? Let me put it that way.
Mm-hmm,
This increase, prof, in these good for nothing pastors all around who
mm-hmm,
preaching in one room,
mm-hmm,
making you give them all your money. What's
mm-hmm,
happening to our people when it comes to religion? Because this is not Christianity, this is just religion now.
mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's probably waiting for another round of awakening. Awakening. It's it gets to a point now. You're talking about even free for all type thing. There has to be another. There has to be another movement in religion. There has to be another movement to kind of reorder things along the path that they should be.
And
Again,
when would that come? What would cause it?
no, what is going to cause it is if things again fall apart, then there is going to be, in politics and what have you, when it comes to politics, we talk about colonialism and neo-colonialism and all those things. There has to be a neo type of looking at the at the cardinal principles of the worshiping of God, the cardinal principles as they relate to God and man and what have you. There has to, always, after the frustration, there is something that sparks the need for new life, that sparks the need for a new movement. So, and that one, people cannot so easily guess it. It's got to come from, if you look at the growth of religion, you're going to find out, going from not knowing God to knowing God, and knowing God in a special way as opposed to another way. So every time there is that one moment you and I may not know, but there's that one moment that stirs up things and takes us to a different level. See what was, especially when you talk about the bringing it a bit to politics, when you talk about the Arab Spring, some a fellow who who set himself ablaze because police kept harassing him and other kind of thing. That is the thing that led to the what? That is the incident that led to the rise up in Tunisia. And what did they do? It spread all over the place there. So there comes in Liberia. What every time, even talking about soldiers who say the first duty of what of a soldier is to obey. Obedience, obedience, obedience.
Obey, obey, obey.
Obedience, obey. And then what happened? Uh, April what? April 14 came, and people who could not so easily stand in front of authorities, what did they do? They rose up. So every time in a generation, there is that moment that sparks what? There is that moment that out of anger or something of that sort. It is never out of pleasantry that starts it. It is out of anger. It is out of frustration that starts the whole thing going. So the thing also is true about religion. It is something that comes up and says, no, this kind of religious doctrine, we cannot accept it. We are moving away from it. That is the thing that brought in the people like Martin Luther and all those other people there. Wesley on the other side. There has to be a moment. You and I may not know, but of course, there is a book I have here which has to do with making the point that revolutions, great moments of revolution, they don't just spring up. They build up to a moment. They start small, and then by the time they start creeping, and they get to the point, and then there's the watershed. So there are moments that you and I may not so easily predict, but when they come, they do come.
Yeah. So let's look at one more comment.
Mm.
Emmanuel Jackson said, "I'm confused about Jonathan Edwards' sermon given in New England. I think it was in the state of Connecticut. Some of the Puritan aristocrats had slaves and indentured workers. Was he
Okay.
referring to his fellow Puritans?"
Well, I guess it got to a point where it had to be those who they kept fit, let them wear it. That's what it was. But he thought that he was bringing out the word of God as it was laid on his heart.
I think Emmanuel brings up a very important point because if you notice, even Findlay, right, the Presbyterian pastor,
Yeah, Robert.
who was a pastor, right, and I guess he was touched by the awakening because he talked about the evils of slavery, but he wanted people to be sent away from the United States because he says the blacks will pollute
Uh-huh.
the fields.
And not
You
to cut you
know?
off, even Jonathan Edwards was caught in that perspective.
Yeah,
Jonathan Edwards was caught in that perspective that where God did not intend black and white to live together.
yeah,
That very Jonathan Edwards.
yeah.
That was the path they were on.
Yeah. So and I didn't intend to read it. This is for another time. But
Mm.
I want to show an example of the duality,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, of these pastors who preached about the equality of man
Uh-huh.
and yet were advocates of slavery
Yeah.
or advocates of of blacks being lesser,
Yeah.
right? And here's
Savages.
one. Actually,
Animals.
it was open because I was looking at it for something, but just listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is by Samuel Miller, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he was a Presbyterian guy also, and I quote, he says, while an adequate and an early remedy for the dreadful evils of slavery is earnestly to be desired, right?
Yeah.
He said, we must pay and pay much as the penalty of our dreadful mistake and folly, right? He goes on. He said, slavery must be abolished, and every slave in our land made free in a day, right? Listen to that. But the idea of liberating and turning loose on society at once 1.5 million slaves
Mm-hmm.
with all the ignorance and depravity
Mm-hmm.
to which their bondage has contributed to reduce them would surely be the extravagance. It would be to bring not merely on a white population, but on the slaves themselves, right? Thus suddenly liberated,
Mm-hmm.
without being prepared for it and
Mm-hmm.
accumulated cursed
Mm-hmm.
under the guise of a blessing.
Hmm.
Now, suppose 1.5 million of such people were scattered throughout the United States.
Mm-hmm.
They could never be trusted as faithful citizens.
Mm-hmm.
They would never feel that their interests and those of the whites were precisely the same,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he says, so he goes on and on and on, you know. So what he's so actually, while we are saying that he's saying slavery is bad, he said, but these people are depraved.
Mm-hmm. As if they did it to themselves.
Yeah, we can have them close to
Mhm.
us, you know. So
And
Emmanuel, that's the thing about these people, you know. When I say these people, I don't mean it. I'm just saying that they said one thing. You
and
can
they
almost
did.
apply John Wesley's almost a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
because they say one thing,
And then,
but they do another thing.
yeah, yeah.
It may say no, the blacks are too depraved. You
Mm-hmm.
know, they can't be equal to the whites. So
Mm-hmm.
even though we free them, they cannot remain here.
Let us keep in mind too that in other parts of the world, uh, you know, uh, Toussaint Louverture
Yeah.
had done the liberation out there. Let us also keep in mind that Nat Turner,
Yes.
Nat
Oh,
Turner had obviously and set a wave of slave revenge and what have you out there. So
yeah.
all these things were kind of boiling in the minds of a lot of people who who had some kind of a lived experience, and therefore they wouldn't want anything like that to easily happen. And that
Yeah.
imagination, there's something about imagination that is kind of tragic. Imagination runs wild, and in that process can do a lot of things, can hold people back from doing what they ought to do, and that sort of a thing.
But we must also, even though we are reading this and we are like, whoa, this John
Mhm.
Edwards is ready in the spirit of Good Friday.
Yeah,
We must also remember that he didn't just he talked about mercy also, you know.
yeah.
God will
Mhm.
listen to you.
And that was towards the end of that sermon.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
okay.
Towards the end, he says, so first he says that he said, therefore let everyone that is out of Christ now awake and fly from the
Mhm.
wrath to come.
Yes,
The wrath of Almighty God is now undoubtedly hanging over a great part of this congregation.
yes,
Let everyone fly out of Sodom. Haste and
yes,
escape for your lives.
yes,
Look not behind you, escape to the mountain, lest you be consumed.
yes.
Yeah. So the man don't want us to die, prof. The man said we should make haste.
Yes, it's like a cause and effect type of thing. You get,
Yeah.
yes, there's a problem, there's the impact of the problem. So how do we? So the cause and effect is like this has happened. This is why it has happened. This is the impact he has created, and how can we, if it is bad, how can we change the course? And that is what he brings in towards the end of the sermon.
Yeah. Yeah. He brings mercy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he brings mercy. So I think that's I think that that is a good one. I think also, if I can add this one to the stream, and now you have an extraordinary opportunity, a day
Yeah.
wherein Christ has flung the door of mercy wide open
Yes.
and
Yes.
stands in the door calling and crying
Yes.
with a loud voice to
Yes.
poor sinners.
Yes.
A day wherein many are flocking to him and pressing into the kingdom of God.
Yes. That's
You
right.
know, so now let's all be mindful that today is Good Friday. So
Uh-huh.
of course, um we can say that we've listened to the sinners in the hands of an angry God, and we ourselves, we are very penitent
Mm-hmm.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and Henry Lass said Liberia produced a preacher who was a change agent in the late 1800s and early 1900s. William Wade Harris was the first West African to advance the gospel from an Afrocentric perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
that's good. I'm sure we have a lot more. Wasn't
Yeah.
there there was another pastor, a cool pastor. I forgot his name.
Mm-hmm.
Not Rare. His name was Rare.
No,
Bishop. Forgotten his name. Yeah.
let's see.
So yeah, people now have to adapt
Mhm.
uh the teachings, I guess, to fit the context.
Yeah.
We can be having people preaching like the Church of England.
Mhm.
When when I went home the other time, I was so happy, so happy. I was in St. Thomas Church, my church, and people were clapping and singing. And
Mm.
before, we never did that. And I'm talking about
Yeah.
way back. Now, way back.
Way
We
back.
just sang from the hymnal.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But now they were singing. So I was very,
Singing.
very happy about that.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Making the church relevant to modern times.
So modern times. So
Whatever
so
that
every
means.
so we will say you should please read Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, and
Mm.
also read Almost a Christian. I
Yeah.
think those two would be very
Mm.
um very good for, yeah.
Uplifting.
I see Robert Timothy Father was a great Methodist preacher in Liberia. Yeah, I
Mm.
remember
Mm.
that we had someone in the church who was a fiery speaker.
Mm.
Yeah, yes. Estuary Nangbe, I think. Wasn't that his
Yes,
name? Estuary Nangbe.
he was a soft-spoken guy.
Yes, yes, yes. But he was a preacher. Yeah.
In Turbo's time, there was Itoma Reeves.
Yes,
Yeah, of
yes.
Providence. Yeah.
Yeah. Providence.
Whatever
Yeah.
happened to him in the end, I don't know. But anyway.
I'm sure somebody will put it on under the chat and tell you what happened to him. Yeah, but yeah, but Prof, I don't know if because next week we're having the Liberian Studies conference.
Hmm.
So just for everybody to know that we are going to, if you don't know about the Liberian Studies conference, please Google it. Uh, uh, um, we are having it tomorrow. I mean, it's tomorrow next week. Three, three, 3 weeks in a row. I mean, 3 days in a row. So
Yeah.
please,
That
uh,
is
um, go to the website
good.
and look at the
The lineup of
the
activities.
lineup. Yeah, sorry, the lineup. You will see that we have very good speakers on all aspects
Liberian
of
society.
Liberian history. From all over the world. It will
Mm.
be virtual. Yeah. So please come and join us, and spread the word about that. So Prophet, I will chat about next week, because I think the conference runs until 6 o'clock next week.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
last year, right after the conference, I was on with Prof. I'm not as young as but Prof and I will, because Prof will also be speaking at the conference. So please share that as well. But Prof,
Yes, ma'am.
what's your last word for these sinners here?
That's it, that's it. You know, I don't care how we twist it and turn it. We, if you seek to know God personally for yourself with proper guidance, you can draw a lot from Him, and through 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 you, He can make changes that are worthy of the God and man relationship. At the heart of things we talk about here we are elevating first the power of language. If one uses language in a very uh, creative way, that person can impact lives of other people. Also, the whole idea of language brings in the need for us to be inquirers. We have to be inquirers. We cannot be a vessel sitting still. We are active vessels and what have you. No one should allow himself or herself to have language which is an agency divested from him or her for other purposes and what have you. You have to create what it takes to have that linguistic agency with which you can help direct and propagate change.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Esther Nangbe, yeah.
yeah.
I think there's a school named after him.
And being a church, the Estrian Nagbe Church in Sinko is there. Yeah,
Prof, here's your
yeah,
answer.
he passed away a few years ago. Thomas Rees. Okay, very good. Yeah.
I wish these people would like write books, before
Well,
they.
he did Mocky. I think he said Mocky something. Mocky Bridge. He wrote something about Mocky Bridge, and I'm talking about the Tomoy Reefs.
Yeah. Oh, Priscilla says,
TORE.
Jackie, what you and Prof are doing could cause a shift for someone awakening. You never know how revival begins. Oh, that's true, Priscilla. Yeah, there's a church. Yeah, Prof. Priscilla is right. I spoke with Dr. Morris Kofa yesterday,
Yeah, yeah,
and it was on about the Liberian Studies Conference,
yeah.
and he said to me, "I thoroughly enjoy the literary hour," and I said, "What do you mean?" He said, Jackie, I watch it. I tell others to watch it. I
Mm,
watch it all the time. And I was
okay.
pleasantly surprised because I
Mm,
just thought that, people,
mm,
we're here, we discuss, we leave. But Priscilla is right,
mm.
that, and that's why we're saying that when we name a book, buy the book. Ask questions. You won't
Yeah,
come on the show. Let's make it interactive.
yeah,
Come, let's discuss.
yeah,
Prophet, we sit here, we talk, we go back and forth. But
yeah,
you could say, I want to come and let me tell you how I felt about the book,
yeah.
and we discussed the book.
Perspective. Yeah,
Yeah, it will
perspective.
be it will be very interesting to do
Mm,
that. We will be having I guess Greg Mittman again on the Empire of Rubber. So
mm.
in the future, so just buy the book and read it,
Yeah,
because he's going to be focusing more on the Liberian presidents and
yeah,
Firestone now.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So buy the book and read about Firestone, and
Mhm.
be prepared to ask questions, about when he comes on. So we want to thank you. We know that we are all sinners in the hands of an angry God,
Yes.
but we hope that God is not dangling us over the
Yeah.
fire.
Over
Yeah,
expect.
and if you have a relative or friend who says, "Oh, my pastor says I'm gonna give him money to pray for me to do this, or I should bring this," talk to your friend.
Or
Say,
even
read
give
the
my
Bible for
body, give
yourself.
my
Question.
body, give my
Yeah,
body for his own
yeah.
gratification and other kind of.
If you have money for your children's school fees and your pastor say brings it, why should you?
Yes.
The Bible will say you should take care of your family.
Yes.
So like we always say, we are all tied, shackled, looking at
Mhm.
the wall,
Mhm.
and then gradually we make our way out of the cave.
Yes.
And so sometimes, I mean, I know I said, why do people listen to charlatans,
Mhm.
but not everybody. People come out of the cave at different times in their
Yes.
lives,
Yes. That's a
Yeah.
powerful statement there. Yes.
Yeah. So some of
Mhm.
us, we just go because based on the learning or the reading, we get
Yeah.
out of the cave quick.
Yes.
And then there are others that it takes time.
Time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we will be here, we will discuss, we will talk, and gradually things will
Hopefully.
be
Yeah.
okay. And as we always say, lift Liberia up.
Yes.
It's our country, so lift
Mhm.
it up. Pray for Liberia
Yeah.
from your lips to God's ears.
Yes.
Always, like I tell the students who are going to Africa, ethical photography. I
Mhm.
said, you say people have bad pictures of Africa. So when you are taking pictures of your country, or you're taking pictures of Africa, ask yourself, does it empower Africa,
Yeah.
if it doesn't
Mhm.
empower, why take that kind of picture?
Yeah.
So the same thing with Liberia. Keep lifting the country up. So we want to say thank you. Enjoy your weekend.
Yes.
Stay safe. Mask up. It seems
Yeah.
as if COVID coming back.
Yeah, I know. You know,
Mask
wants to
up.
leave us.
Yeah, and Prophet, I say drink turmeric, lemon,
Yeah.
ginger, and
Mm-hmm.
honey, so you
Yes.
can get better.
Mm-hmm.
So that we
You
can all go to
need,
Liberia for July 26th.
yes, you need
Yeah,
all that.
yeah, yeah. So thank you all for joining us.
Mhm.
and stay well. We are all Liberians, and let us not forget that. Thank you.
Yes.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home.